In a way, what I want to do is it follows on a bit from Graham's presentation yesterday, which I thought was great. I mean, the thing I found about that was looking at New York from the perspective of somebody who was there just a couple of days before, gave it a sense of that's what it's really like now. You know, as most things on New York, they're kind of more manufactured and something that's been done about it. But I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed that. Anyway, thank you very much for that, Graham. But I did notice one or two large buildings in the background in that, which reminded me I wanted to do, in a way, a part two of skyscrapers. And this was about the sort of the history of Manchester skyscrapers. But in doing that, I went off on all sorts of tangents. So you'll just have to bear with me on that. So I'm going to share the screen. Manchester skyscrapers, love them or hate them. That's just taken from a drone view of the city as you can see it now, with all sorts of skyscrapers popping up all over the place. And one thing I noted, and I'm not going to do a critique of why I think that Manchester City Council's policy about skyscrapers is wrong, which I do, but it's more just to look at the background to all that. I've previously gone on about why I think the policies might be misplaced, but there's no doubt about it that the skyscrapers in Manchester are really loved by a lot of people. Not me, but by a lot of people, and a lot of it is to do with how wonderful they look in photographs and on videos of it. They just look fantastic, and it's a bit like, I don't know if you've been on holiday and you've been looking at photographs and videos of where you're going, and then you go there and you find there are all sorts of insects flying around and there are smells going on and there's a building over there belching out some smoke. You know, there's a feeling like that. I think it's a bit like that with skyscrapers. You've got to really go down on the ground and experience them to understand what they're really like, I think. Anyway, so this is about this. And basically any building over, there are two measures. One is 100 meters or 150 meters high is now considered a skyscraper, whereas originally it was for buildings of between 10 and over 10 to 20 floors. Now, the history of skyscrapers, which you might be aware of, is the first one that was actually called a skyscraper was the Chicago Home Insurance building. Now, why is it that there were there no skyscrapers before the 1880s?
Concrete.
Partly, not the most important feature though. It's a very simple one.
People didn't want them.
They might still not want them, but they've got them. Yeah, no, it's the simple fact that lifts were invented by Elisha Otis, and the Otis company is still going very strong.
Yeah.
Amazingly. And not only that, but in the safety elevator was invented in the 1850s, and this is one that if the power went, it still didn't go down to the, just drop you down to the bottom. So that was really important. People didn't like walking up more than 4 or 5 stories. Well, for me, I think 2 stories would be enough, but that was it. So they didn't build anything above that, generally speaking. Though apparently the Romans had buildings that were about 40 meters high, for which people lived in as well. So it's not entirely true, but by and large, you'd have to have very fit legs to be walking up 40 floors or more. So this was the original skyscraper. It was only 10 stories high. 2 were added later in 1891, making it 54.9 meters tall. It was demolished in 1931. On to Manchester. And these are some of the latest developments, the Trinity Islands, which are where the River Irwell is divided by Trinity Way. So it's partly on Salford ground, I think, a bit, but anyway, it's very near to the city centre. And the £741 million buildings are supposed to house 2,000 new flats, a gym, garden and bar. And they were approved by the Manchester City Council without having to give any affordable housing at all. as a price for it either, which I could go on about, but I won't. So the various buildings in them are between, the smallest one is 119.5 meters, and the tallest is building D, which is 183 meters high. And so I will come back to these later. And as I said, a lot of people love Manchester skyscrapers. This was the image I got when I put in an AI tool, Manchester skyscrapers, and this is what it came up with, which I thought was a very interesting image of it. And in the comment about the Trinity Islands one, these are the first few comments that were on it by people. 60 stories. Actually, it should be EYS there, but they put it stories, IES. We already have 60 stories. Should have been 80. That's the first one. It's a great project. Can't really fault it. I just wish all 4 towers were 150 meters plus. Never dreamed 10 years ago there would be so many talls. That's what people in the know call the skyscraper, talls. Get me more towers. Well, it looks like this means we'll have 2 towers now of around 200 meters. Time to press on. 250 meters plus next time. So you can see there's a lot of enthusiasm for it. But just as a little aside, I wanted to do a little bit about Hong Kong, which is a skyscraper capital of the world. Whoops. And this is one of the buildings these are photographs taken by a Hong Kong photographer of there are 9,000 high-rise buildings in Hong Kong, of which 4,000 are skyscrapers standing taller than 100 meters, with 517 above 150 meters. And the tallest was that last one that I mentioned, the 108-story International Commerce Centre, which is only the 12th largest in the world, but there you go. The total built-up height, combined heights of Hong Kong skyscrapers is approximately 207 miles. I don't know what that means really, making it the world's tallest urban agglomeration. So this is, I'll just show you some of the photos. That one doesn't look too bad, does it? But it's, you know, people have got a lot of greenery on it.
It's like factory farming. People like little chickens or hamsters, little hamster cages. It's
degrading and horrible.
It's horrible.
There's one taken a bit further back up from it, so it gives some indication of them. They are.
What are they going to be like when they become slums? It's going to be absolutely dreadful.
Well,
100 years from now.
Then you knock them down and build new ones is the usual result of that. Here's another one.
God. God save us.
Well, I mean, Hong Kong is unusual. It's a very restricted amount of land that they had to, you know, that's surrounded by mountains as well. Here's another one.
Oh,
and it goes on and on. Well, there's a car.
How do they manage for water? Sorry, it's just...
I imagine they get it via pipes, actually, a bit like we do.
Well, yes. Yeah.
There's what it, so this is by Victor Cheng, the photographs, and they are quite remarkable photographs. And here's one bit further back of Kowloon with Hong Kong Island in the background. It's really quite astonishing. Now, one of the things that maybe Bill might be interested in this is the Hong Kong Symphony of Lights. It's a daily, or should I say nightly, light and sound show across the Victoria Harbour in Hong Kong. It's the world's largest permanent light and sound show according to the Guinness World Records, and there were 42 participating buildings in the show. I was going to show you, and there's also been a symphony, a piece of work by a symphony orchestra to go with the lights. I can't imagine anything worse than having this go off in front of you every night. But there you go. I had a look at some of the the videos of them, and it actually looks surprisingly disappointing. The thing is about lights; they never really can compare with fireworks?
It depends where you are when you're looking at it. If you're on the water when you're watching it, it's very spectacular. But I suspect if you're on the land, it has,
Have you been to Hong
less
Kong, Graham?
effect.
Have you been Have you been to Hong Kong, Graham?
Yeah.
Was it good?
Well, we went on you can take a sort of ferry ride when the lights are on, and they give you free booze and everything, so it was terrific. But I mean, it's very spectacular, but it's like fireworks, really. Somehow they're slightly disappointing, on just no matter how magnificent they are. I don't know, to me anyway. But I suspect if you are not actually on the water looking at it, and you're on the ground underneath it, it probably doesn't have the same kind of effect.
No.
I spent nearly 10 years, nearly every year, going to Hong Kong for the Symphony of Lights from when they started off. We started off with every Christmas with the Hong Kong Symphony Orchestra and with the City Chamber Orchestra of Hong Kong, doing a Christmas project in the park, Victoria Park in Hong Kong, that was televised. And I mean, many composers have been involved in the Symphony of Lights, but you're right, there's too much extra light, all the lights of the buildings. You don't actually get the effect of the lights. But remember, Hong Kong is an island, and as you said, there's very little land, so they go upwards. And water is not a problem because it comes from the mainland.
Anyway, let's move on swiftly. Thank you for that, Bill. I didn't know you, but you were so involved in it.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah,
Now,
I'll show you some photographs one day of the stuff we've done.
Yeah, do. That's great idea. Looking at the history of tall buildings in Manchester, this is Sunlight House. Does anybody recognise it? Do you know? Can you remember where it is on Key Street?
Mm.
And it is a nice building. I really like it. It's the one at the back there, and it was Manchester's tallest building when it was built in 1932 by somebody called Joseph Sunlight. So it wasn't named because of sunlight. It was named after somebody called Sunlight.
Okay.
But it's made of Portland stone. It's accentuated by the dominant corner towers and the slit light windows. Grade 2 listed building now. It now houses offices, shops, and a health club, including the original basement swimming pool, which was used as a Turkish baths for a long time. So that's quite interesting. It's got an Art Deco ceiling in it, and the swimming pool was opened by Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Carol Lombard.
Wow.
Well, I thought I knew about Manchester history, but there's all sort of stuff that seems to have passed me by. I knew nothing about this. That's why I got a bit sidetracked by it. It's also entailed the demolition of some of the oldest property in Manchester. So it's really quite a building, though. And this is in fact Joe Sunlight on the left. He was actually born as Joseph Zhukovsky in Novogrudok in Belarusia, then part of the Russian Empire. The first 10 years he spent there, he was because of his religious persecution. His parents were Jewish, so he left with his parents, Israel and Minnie, and they arrived eventually in England, where he immediately changed his name. I don't know whether he did it at the age of 10 to Joe Sunlight, which I think is a terrific name. It might be good for a singer, wouldn't it, or something? Joe Sunlight. He was also, and apparently he got a job as in an architecture office in Brasenose Street, and then at the age of 18 set out as one himself. And by the age of 18, he'd already built 200 houses in Beswick. So it's quite an amazing individual. But he was most well known by the public as a racehorse owner and punter. He was nicknamed the Mug Punter. He once lost £15,000 at Ascot and then won it back the following day. He was the man in a lucky velvet collared coat. That's actually a portrait of him from the National Portrait Gallery. And his studying his race card with a grey shell framed magnifying glass was a familiar figure to racegoers. He was once so badly injured by a horse and given up for dead when he was 2. He once joked, "I've been trying to get even with horses ever since." So he really was quite a character. But what is interesting as well, the only actual building that he built was the South Manchester Synagogue in Fallowfield, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's quite a place. Its membership, he built it in 1913. Yeah, Graham?
I was just going to say it's closed now, isn't it? It's
Yes, it
not
closed.
used anymore. It's a lovely building.
It closed about I think it was in 2003, something like that. And do you know what the reason it closed?
Maybe not enough congregation, I don't know.
Yeah, well, the thing is with, I hope I get this right, is with Jewish congregations, it's the reason that the Jewish community in North Manchester started off in right near the centre, in just where the co-op is now, and then gradually moved up the hill to Cheetham Hill, because you supposedly had to be within walking distance of your synagogue, and as people got better off, they moved up into more affluent areas, and the same happened here. Whereas it had a membership of 800 during the 1970s. This synagogue, it was out of members because they were moving out to Altrincham and Bowden, and the new synagogue, the new South Manchester Synagogue, is now been built in Bowden.
Right.
I
thought maybe it was a Reform synagogue, but
well, I still think that within
probably the same thing applies. Yeah,
the same sort of thing. It wasn't quite as demanding as the Orthodox one, but it's the same principle I think applies to it. But anyway, he built it in a kind of Turkish style. I think it's a rather attractive building. I'm not sure what's going to happen to it now. Coming back to other Manchester tall buildings, the Manchester before the Sunlight building, this Manchester Town Hall, the bell tower is 85 meters tall. And do you know what the clock bell is called? The Great Abel.
Oh, Abel Hayward,
From Abel Hayward, correct, yeah. And it was designed by Waterhouse and completed in 1877, and is being renovated over the last few years, isn't it? So it should be quite something when it's fully renovated. I think it's a terrific building. So it is regarded as one of the finest interpretation of Gothic revival architecture anywhere in the world. I think I love it. I think it's really good.
I think the interesting thing about it is it's asymmetrical as well. If you look at it from the front, it's not balanced on both sides.
No, it isn't. It's right. It's more like a triangle, isn't it? In terms of so the facade, like a lot of posh buildings, the facade is always the bit that you really concentrate. If you go around the back, it isn't quite as flash usually. Stately homes are like that. If you've ever been to them, as you approach them, they think, "What a magnificent building!" And you go around the back, and it's all sort of a bit tatty. Well, that's my experience of them. Anyway, this is there you can see in front is Sunlight House. It's not a very good. It's the only image I could find of the Quay Street Tower in Manchester. It was proposed to be built behind Sunlight House and to be finished. Well, it wasn't to be finished in 1932. Actually, it was to be finished in the 1940s. If it had been built, it would have been the tallest high-rise building in Europe at 110 meters. And I wonder why they actually refused to give it planning permission. It was during the 1940s. It was supposed to have be completed in 1948, actually, not 1932. It's wrong there. Any reason as to why they thought it might not be a good idea? Late 1940s.
The imminent war.
No,
Yeah,
it was after the war. Actually, it was going to be done eventually. It was refused permission as it was said to be inconsiderate, as much of Manchester was still rebuilding after the Blitz of World War II, and the site is currently home, apparently, to a multi-storey car park. There you go. And the Quay Street Tower was one of the projects from Joe Sunlight, and that's what he was attempting to do. It would have been quite something, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It looks a bit like the Moscow high-rise buildings to me.
I was going to say it looks kind of Eastern Bloc sort of design.
Yeah. Then onto the CIS Tower, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Did anybody used to go there to the ballroom? I think it was that they had with discos on every.
Yeah, I used to go from Bolton.
Did you enjoy them?
I thought they were a bit boring, really.
Well, I went once and just felt so embarrassed and shy that I never went again. But the CIS Tower, what does CIS stand for?
It's the insurance.
Cooperative Insurance Society.
Correct, the Cooperative Insurance, based on a bomb-cleared site on Miller Street, 25 floors in height. It was for an open plan office building to house 2,500 staff and was given listed status in 1995. And it's a rare example in England of a high-quality skyscraper of the 60s inspired by American designs. But it's also got a rather checkered and interesting history as well. Now, actually, you were on the tour of the church we went to.
So it's like that, yeah.
Isn't that like the one in the St. Augustine's Church? It's in the forest.
Yeah, the Reredos.
The Reredos, yeah. I've not been able to find any other pictures of it or how it got there. So that's what the open plan offices look like. You can remember those, can't you? Gosh, that must be a fairly recent building.
Oh.
But it's now had a second life. It's now known as the CIS, or it might not be CIS because they've sold it anymore. I don't know. It was and you can see it's got the writing at the top, I think. And it's the largest commercial solar facade in Europe. And again, this is something I knew nothing about, which is, I think it's really pathetic, really. I didn't know that. Now you go past it and think, oh, there's the old CIS building. But in 2006, the service tower was clad with over 7 million watt photovoltaic modules. It's one of Britain's largest solar power systems, single systems, and it's grade 2 listed. A rather odd statistic, this. It generates enough electricity a year to make 6.8 million pieces of toast. Well, to toast them, that is, or 9.9 million cups of tea every year, which actually isn't that much. It's actually not enough to power the whole building. It makes it sound very good. And it was switched on on November the 3rd, 2005, a bit like the Blackpool illuminations, by the Prime Minister, who was, of course, 2005, Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Right. So, again, a little backstory to what is a very iconic building in Manchester. And I think, interestingly, it's been said it's one of the best made. I think the Co-op, because it's based in Manchester, feels a kind of a civic responsibility to make buildings that are worthy of the city. And I think both the CIS Tower and also the new one that they've done do that. The Co-op building is the only one of all the skyscrapers to meet what are called the BREEAM standards in terms of environmentalism.
It's also more interesting to look at as well, isn't it?
I think so too. Yes, I do. Yes, the new one especially.
Yeah.
Though it's interesting as well that going back to the CIS building, that they had the reason that they came up with the solar panels idea is because the mosaics that have been put up by 5 guys putting up several, I don't believe this, putting up several million of these tiles on the side of the building, which then started to fall off 6 months after they put them up. So they were forever trying to mend it, and they decided just to strip the lot off and put the solar panels on instead. So there you go. Out of problems become solutions. We get solutions. Give me solutions, not problems. Who said that? Yeah, Mrs. Thatcher, I think it was. This is
the City Tower. When it was being built,
yeah,
a bunch of us in the 6th one went from school to ask if we could go to the top of it, and they took us up in one of the workmen's lifts, on the side of the building, right to the top. Nobody objected or anything. There's no health and safety rules and regulations. We were able to wander around the top of an incomplete building. Wouldn't happen nowadays, I wouldn't have thought. But,
No,
and then we just asked the guys, and they said, "Oh yeah, you can go." Yeah.
it's also interesting that if you there is an underground tunnel under it that goes through up to Oxford Road to where there was and you can. I was taken on a tour of that. I started off in Oxford Road in a place that looks very nondescript. It goes down in a lift below the waterline through tunnels, which were part of the. You remember they had. I don't know what they called them now. The places of safety in case of nuclear attack.
Yeah.
And they played World War II music past all the bunks and everything. We came up into the Sunley Tower house building. Anyway, so that's the 8th tallest building in Manchester, I think. Still, I'm not sure whether it is. There is some dispute about it. And interestingly, I'm running out of time. This is the only picture I could get of it. There's a circuit board design on the side of Sunley Tower. I think I remember. Can you see those patterns?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be circuit board designs to show how modern it was, I suppose. I think they're still there. So that's another little part of knowledge. Moving on to the more modern buildings. This is Deansgate Square and Elizabeth Tower in Manchester. And this is where the real biggies are. The south one, the South Tower, which I put is now the tallest building in Manchester, 201 meters high. I was looking at what price it would be for a flat in there, and a 4-bedroom size one you can get for £640,000. Whereas if you wanted a one right at the top, then you'd find it'd be 1.4 million. Anyway, so it's the Elizabeth Tower, which was I think the one being built on the right at the time. It's got one of the highest swimming pools in Western Europe at the 44th floor, a co-working space and communal hub, state-of-the-art gym, residence lounge, and podium-level retail space. And they're all like that. They're all becoming the equivalent of vertical gated communities, I think. Oh, sorry, Elizabeth Tower. There's a picture of it. It's the 5th tallest. But still, I don't know whether it's impressive or not. They all seem much of a muchness, these, to me. This is one haven't been familiar with, and that's because it's not finished. It's been approved and it started, but this is an artist's impression. It's the 4th tallest, and it's I should have the height there. Yes, 155 meters tall, and it's around Collier Street and Greengate, and it's developed in phases. The first of 50 stories, made up of 559 apartments. This is Deansgate Square East, completed in 2020. They've got 4 duplex penthouses. I'm never sure what duplex means, actually, but anyway, it's a penthouse means it's at the top, the 3rd tallest skyscraper. And I just looked at the prices, and for a penthouse for one of these, or the equivalent to number 1 Deansgate, it's £1.25 million to buy one. And for the West Tower penthouse of these, it'll cost you for if you're renting it £8,125 a month. Whereas if you go,
thanks for that, Bernard.
yeah, I thought you like to make a note of that to investigate later. Yeah. But you
I can't think of anything worse than living somewhere like that.
No, not me.
No. Maybe it's because we're old and not being very technological or something. I don't know, but it just beggars belief. Though a smaller flat in the East Tower, a 1-bedroom flat would only cost you £300,000, so it's not all that.
Are they all leasehold, Bernard?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure on that though. I'd need to check.
I wouldn't have one at a gift.
This is one that's not in one of the top 10. It's only 80 meters high, but I think it's one of the more interesting buildings. It's the Civil Justice Centre. It was nominated for the RIBA Sterling Prize and named one of the best British buildings of the 21st century by Blueprint magazine, 2011, which I think is kind of over-egging it a bit, but I still think, isn't it called sometimes the
Filing cabinet.
filing cabinet? Because it does look like that, isn't it? You haven't pushed them in.
Is it a business building or are there
Well,
apartments?
I think there are, maybe it's to do with the courts nearby, and that's why it's called the Civil Justice Centre.
No, but I mean, is it all? Is some of it residential? I don't know.
You'd have thought so. When you're like, I'm sorry, I don't know that. I'd have to check up on that.
No, I'm not putting you to the test. I just wondered.
Okay. I'm rushing through it because I'm running out of time now. Beetham Tower of fame was the tallest building in Manchester for about 10 15 years. It was built by Carillion, which in Carillion was in the largest ever trading liquidation in the UK in 2018, if you remember. It's the hotel is a 4-story annex containing a swimming pool, a ballroom, conference rooms, and a coffee shop. Has anybody been up there? I imagine quite a lot of you have you?
Yeah,
You have, Graham.
Yeah.
You have, Maureen.
To the bar, you mean? Yeah.
Well, to have a look at it from up there. Yeah.
My daughter used to sing up there at one
Oh,
time.
yes, you mentioned
years
that.
ago.
Wow. Yeah,
Years ago.
that's sensational.
I stayed there. I booked a room on one of the top floors.
Oh, wow. You're a skyscraperist.
Well, it was all traveling on the metro and watch it being built. So when it was built, I just wrote to them and said, I love it and I'd like to come.
Oh,
So they gave
wow.
me a good price. Yeah. I
Do you
got
know the
parking
architect's
in
name,
as well.
I did have it, and I don't think I've got it now.
He was paid by getting the penthouse on the top, wasn't he?
A part of
And
it, or
also-
maybe he got it cheap or something because of
He
that.
also designed the 4 towers that are being built
Yeah.
from there, and so he's swapping that penthouse at the top of this to the penthouse on the tallest tower that has got an unimpeded view of the whole of Cheshire Plain.
Well, there you go.
Hasn't it got an olive grove in the top on the top of it?
Yes. What, in the new one?
I know in that one. In the
Oh, I
Beaton
don't know
Tower.
about that. I don't know about it. Does everybody like it?
No.
I don't.
I quite like that.
I've never liked the shape. It just never balanced for me. But and there's also one of the problems with the tower that was added to it. I've mentioned this before. Is the humming voice emanating
the
from
humming.
the tower?
Mm.
And also from the fact that in 2009, a fire on the 31st floor, the tower had to be partly evacuated, and one apartment was left uninhabitable. And it was the one belonging to City supporters, Mario Balotelli, the footballer.
Oh.
Which I thought was another of these little asides of history. So this is officially the tallest skyscraper in Manchester, Deansgate Square, South Tower, 201 meters, 65 floors, 2018. So that's the Manchester skyscrapers. Just as an added bonus, this is on skyscrapers. I won't do skyscrapers again, I promise. This is the One World Trade Center, which was featured just in the background in one of Graham's photos yesterday.
I like that. That's lovely.
I think of the various skyscrapers, that's probably the most elegant one I've seen.
I like that.
And that's interestingly a 3D photo from Google Earth, so you can find that yourself. And it's the tallest skyscraper in the Americas, and I think it's something like about the 6th largest in the world. And these are the tallest buildings. I won't go through all of them. But you will notice of that list, 1, 2, 3, 4 in China, 1 is in Dubai, 1 Saudi Arabia, 1 in America, 1 in South Korea, and I don't think there are any in Europe at all. There you go. And that, of course, is the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. 828 meters high. 162 stories. It's just phenomenal. It beat the one before by quite a few meters as well. It's not just a tiny difference. And so that's currently holding the record for it. And of course, there's no real thing stopping them building even bigger than that, but you have to make the base bigger and bigger the taller you buy it normally. So it'd be interesting to see it. And I think it's on one of the top buildings, that the lift going down goes at over 40 miles an hour. Well, otherwise you'd be all day getting yeah. Certainly wouldn't like have to walk down it or up it in a crisis, would you? Yeah.
God, you'd leave your dinner there, wouldn't you? At the top? I would.
Just nipped out for a pint of milk and the lift broke. Yeah.